Hello and greetings, Army brethren. It's your buddy Chop It On coming at you with an NHL slate breakdown type of video. The hyper simple, super quick way to bust up the NHL slate. We've got 6 games today, so let's kind of dive in. Of course, after you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, you ring the notification bell, you follow me on Twitter, you consider becoming an Army veteran and a VIP inside the DFSArmy.com by going down to the comments section, clicking the link, and using the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, to trigger 20% off when you decide to join and become a VIP. Those are the housekeeping notes, but we can dive on in and tear up the research station today. But let's first take a glance at the slate, because I do a lot of different things when I want to look at the slate. First thing I'm doing is looking at the scoring situations, and I add goals for and goals against together and get matchup scores, which allow me to compare apples to apples. If this is your first time with me, thanks for joining me. I'm trying to create an apples to apples comparison where I can look at any game on the slate and see which one's more favorable for the scoring environment. If you followed me last night, we predicted it. Last night was kind of trash, but a lot of stuff was not coinciding with Vegas for the first time in quite a while, because, man, I went to the St. Louis Vancouver game last night. On paper, my matchup score was showing that Vancouver was going to blow them out, and really and truly, the game did hit the over, so it wasn't terrible. But there were a lot of weird third line scores and stuff that we don't normally predict, and a lot of other goofy things around the industry. I know I personally did not have a good night last night. I don't know what kind of night you had, but just a lot of the people that were supposed to be factored into most of the scoring most of the time were not. And of course, the games still kind of scored some goals, but the people that were, kind of your rare guys that kind of pop up from time to time all seem to pop up on the same night. It's hockey; it happens. Most of the time, if we play the odds, that works, and that's what most of my sheet is built around. If you're looking ahead at the stacks and looking at the value center wing defenseman type plays, you're going to see a lot of household names on there, because I try to stick with the odds. And when I'm trying to build a cash lineup or even a core or a foundation of a GPP lineup, I want the majority of the guys in there that are doing the scoring. So I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit inside the research station today on Friday as we dive in. But the matchup scores, as I was saying before, is goals for plus goals against. Colorado goals for plus Florida goals against. Looking at the two together, for Florida or for Colorado, you see a 70 score. That would be, like 3.5 goals for and then 3.5 goals against for Florida. Add them together, you get a 7.0 or a 70, whatever you want to call it. But that's how I do it, okay? And mid 60s is pretty good. Over 70 is pretty good. Over 80 is getting really good. And we see an 80 on the slate today down here in an 83. Last night, Vancouver was an 86, scored 4 goals. Colorado should score today. Pittsburgh should score today. Washington should score today. Edmonton should score today. The rest of them, might. We could get an outlier performance out of the Rangers. We can get an outlier performance out of, the Carolina Hurricanes on their massive travel schedule. And, they could explode for 7 goals. But odds are it'll be a pretty average game. The more favorable games that are set to maybe go above average, Colorado, Pittsburgh, Washington, Edmonton, those are the ones we're going to focus on. Those are the teams that are in the top 5. There's not even really a fifth one worth mentioning in here. At least if I'm focused on a 6-game slate, I don't need to spread out too wide. 3.4 is the implied team total. Historically, there is an inflection point at 3.4 out of Vegas for an implied team scoring total. Tells you that I guess that the goal scoring environment is favorable for these teams, and you're going to see a couple of ones in here that are not in here. So this is where the sheet conflicts a little bit. Washington, Edmonton, okay, good. Washington is scoring goals. New York's giving them up. Edmonton is scoring goals. Detroit's giving them up. So that stands to reason that Vegas would spot that and say that's a good scoring environment. Florida, interesting. With Colorado on the road, maybe Vegas is looking more at splits. Maybe the public really likes Florida right now. I'm not seeing Florida scoring a lot of goals. So, in Chicago, in the same kind of boat, not producing a ton. And conversely, it's not like Columbus is just giving them up like crazy. I think Chicago's goals, actually, Columbus is giving them up, but I think Chicago's goals for in the last few games is only like 2.0. Something. So it's not like they're doing much with their opportunity. We should still account for them, though. We should still take them into consideration. If you wanted to build stacks around them tonight, that's fine. I'm not probably going to, but I'm definitely going to be looking towards them for one-offs in my cash games and things like that, because I trust Vegas too. If I'm looking at my stacks, Washington. These are the producers on the team right now. It's that first power play. Backstrom, Oshie, Carlson, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov. You can stack any three or any four or all five, and you're correlated. Doesn't mean you can't. It doesn't mean you discount, Eller or Burakovsky or whatever. Just means that these are the guys that are doing the damage right now. And these are the places where your odds are best. And if you look back historically, Washington's a pretty top-heavy team, as is Edmonton. McDavid, Draisaitl, Cassian's on that top line for cheap, but Clefbaum's the defenseman on the power play that's doing it. If you wanted to throw a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in there, be my guest. I put him in my little one-off section, so he'll be in my player pool. And if he correlates in on the optimizer, if it sucks him in to those stacks, fine, so be it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. He's a value play right now in the way he's producing. He's underpriced. So I could very well go put him in that Edmonton stack. Colorado's top heavy as well. That top line, Landeskog, Rantanen, McKinnon. Kadri correlates on the power play. If you wanted to throw a defenseman in there, Makar, Eric Johnson, whatever, feel free. I'm just trying to keep some of the defensemen out of my main stacks, unless like a John Carlson or a Chris Letang, they really, really factor into a lot of the scoring. I'm going to let my optimizer mix and match those defensemen as one-offs, kind of bouncing around. It's a little bit of a different twist for me. I really generally like including defensemen because I think they overlap scoring lines really well. If I've got like a power play situation where well, I guess like in Washington with Kuznetsov here and Ovechkin, yes, they're on the power play together, but Ovechkin's on the top line with Oshie and Backstrom. Kuznetsov's down on the lower line, and Carlson would overlap the two because he tends to, defensemen don't rotate in and out exactly with the wingers. They kind of stay out on the ice while the front three guys make a change, and then the back two guys maybe go off a minute or so later. And that typically leads to a little bit of accessibility through your defenseman onto that second line. Just because he's on the top defensive pairing doesn't mean he's not going to get some kind of an assist or something from somebody from the second line, because he's going to overlap a little bit. So Letang and Carlson would overlap people, like Simon, who serves on the second power play unit, Hornquist, who serves on the second line. These types of things. That's why these are still correlated pretty much no matter how you slice them up. You're either getting power play correlation, top line correlation, whatever. So that's basically how I'm using those stacks, and that's why, is because no matter which stack I throw out there, it's correlated. The money centers here is your value plays. These are guys that are underpriced right now. And how did I find that? I went into the research station and I did one of my favorite techniques. I went to the skaters tab. I scrolled over to the right to the 5-game section. And I sorted by DraftKings points, descending order, brought the top to the top. Okay. Now, guys are scoring points at different clips, or different guys are scoring points. Some are hot, some are cold, but over 5 games, this is the average. I can also look at the shots on goal and block shots. And this is the total number there. So I'm looking for activity. That's my floor. That's my activity floor. But I'm looking for results, which is points, right? Fantasy points. And now I'm going to scroll over here. Since this is going in order by points, by DraftKings points, the salaries are all jumbled up. So if I come over here and look at the salaries, I can search for value. 8,000 should be at the top. 7,900 should be at the top. 6,700 maybe towards the top. 6,100 all of a sudden, hey, that's in here. Look, 78, 75, 77, 67, 72, and there's a 61 in here. And that's James Neal. So James Neal is providing value over the last 5 games. May or may not provide it tonight. It's hockey. But he's providing value over the last 5 games. He's mispriced. If things were perfect and they were perfectly aligned with fantasy point scoring, then these salaries would also be in perfect order. But because these salaries are not in perfect order according to how these guys are scoring points, the pricing mismatches show you who's overpriced and underpriced currently. If I come all the way down here, $7,400, Patrick Kane. Nobody's going to deny the fact that Patrick Kane is a stud player and he's typically cash safe and all that stuff. But right now he's not producing. all of these guys for cheaper are outproducing him. Therefore, he's overpriced. He should be priced more like these guys than like these guys right now. Does that make sense? So when I scroll down and I see these things pop out, I can sort by position, I can sort by team and run my core of teams that I'm looking to stack, which would be Edmonton, Pittsburgh, Washington, Colorado. I can turn all those on and then only search here for value plays. I can also turn those off and search outside of there for value one-offs. I can also search by position. And when I search by position, automatically Zibanejad jumps to the top. He's in here with these $7,000 players, and he's 6,800 value. 5,200 in here, which what should be $6,000 and $7,000 players. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins value. Kuznetsov probably value. 59, 58, 6. There's a 4,800 in Nazem Kadri value, right? So this is what I focused on today. Down here, 4,500 Dylan Strome value potentially because he's producing like people who are more expensive than him. I can look at defense and do the same thing. That's always a fun one because with defense, you get some really cheap guys that pop in. There's 3,900 for Uyghur in Florida. So the top defensive pairing doesn't serve power play time. But if you look at why, 3,900 for Uyghur, in there with the $4,000 and $5,000, $6,000 defenseman. But if I scroll back over to the last 5 game section, I can find out why. Where's Uyghur? Down here in the white line, 18% shooting percentage right now, so he's getting results on his shot, which, he'll come and go throughout the year. 4 blocks, not a lot of blocks, 15 shots and blocks though. What he's getting, what his average at 9.7, the reason why is because he scored a couple of goals. And he's factored into a couple of assists. Now that's going to come and go. So Uyghur is not exactly rock solid value. He's just, you're hoping the trend continues. He's value right now. It could end at any moment because if these goals and assists vanish, poof, he's going to disappear and play like his price. But right now he's playing above his price. Make sense? I'm down here a little bit more. You'll find the real cheapies down in here. Skiji, whatever his name is, however you pronounce that, is a good one for 3,800. You got some low 4s. You got some 5s and stuff up here, but like a 5,600 in Jacob Treba is the second best point producing defenseman on the slate, but for $1,000 under John Carlson, which you can't argue John Carlson's playing out of his mind right now. If you've noticed his results. I mean, he's at 24 points per game on the average. 3 goals, 8 assists. I mean, the dude's a monster right now. He's not providing a ton of shots and blocks compared to the production, but it's because his shot percentage is high. But if you look at somebody like Jacob Treba, he's doing about the same with the shots and blocks. He's just not quite getting the results. He's got a couple goals himself, doesn't have the assists that Carlson's being credited with. Of course, that'll settle down for Carlson. He's averaging 16.1 fantasy points per game, which is great over the last 5, and he's $1,000 cheaper. Now, because Carlson's blowing him out of the water, I would still probably choose a Carlson if I had the money to spend up on it. Hope that continues, but if you're a regressionist, you could say this 8 assists and 3 goals is going to come back to earth, and I don't want Carlson anymore because it's just too much of a price for the fact that things are going to balance out. The pendulum's going to swing the other way, and I don't want to be caught holding the basket when it happens. That theory's fine too. DFS is wide open, man. So if I go back to my sheet really quick, I mean, I've shown you a little bit about that technique and that tool. And if you want to use the power of that tool, you've obviously got to become a VIP at dfsarmy.com to unlock the power of that tool. You can filter it, you can sort out, you can play with positions, you can play with sample sizes, all sorts of things. It's a very, very cool tool. But there's the list. Nugent Hopkins, Kadri, Strome, Dubois, Zibanejad, Barkov, Henrique. Now, here's a crazy call. I don't know why, but every time I see Dubois' name, it pops out at me today. Not like I'm looking at numbers. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like you see a guy repeatedly when you're looking at the slate. You keep seeing the same guy over and over again. You go, you know what? I got a weird feeling he might score a goal tonight. I don't know why. There's no number indicating it. I just kind of got one of those weird feelings where every time I'm looking at the slate, his name's catching my eye. That's the kind of gut you can go with in tournaments. I'm not saying run all in on the guy. I'm just saying give him a little boost. Put him in some more lineups. He's providing some value right now. He's fine. He might end up having a good game tonight. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I hate getting that little pit in my stomach when I pass a guy repeatedly, and then later that night I didn't play him and he scores. Wing value. Wilson, yes. Lafferty's up there as long as he's up on that line replacing McCann or McNabb, whatever the dude's name is. Aston Reese, Burakovsky, Tanev, Hoffman. Hoffman's a huge value right now. He's higher priced, but he's still just playing like a boss. Rakel, Silverman, Shaw, Zingle. Zingle's way too cheap. Helm's a neat little punt right now. And then defensemen, Schultz, Eric Johnson, Pettersson, Dumoulin, a lot of the Pittsburgh defensemen. I'm going to expect, even in my Edmonton stacks or my Washington stacks, I'm going to expect to see a lot of Pittsburgh defensemen because they're cheap. Pettersson and Dumoulin are cheap. Schultz is even underpriced, and even Letang's kind of underpriced for the role that they're taking on that team. I don't mind running double D's out of Pittsburgh if I have to. I just need Pittsburgh to have a good game. These guys should factor in if they do. There's Treba, Yandel, quarterbacks, the Florida power play. Uyghur again, Pesky, and Skiji. So there you go. It's a simple list. These are the guys that are going to be in most of my lineups. I may add one or two as I go through the day, but generally speaking, that's the bulk of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to try and build every lineup I have with as many of these guys on it as they possibly can. I've got a couple of real cheapies down here, a couple of cheaper defensemen down here, so everything should work out just fine if I go through the domination station and uncheck all of the positions and players and then just go check these names here in my stacks and in my values and then turn around and set them up. Now, I might be missing some. Like the other night, it was way too early. I didn't notice that last night that Hughes got moved up to the top line in New Jersey. And so based on that, I would have missed him. I caught it late in the news and was able to put him in one of my lineups. It didn't help me much, but he was a smash value last night because, and here's the thing, I'll leave you with this little bit of theory. Why people ran so much Taylor Hall and Kyle Palmieri last night, I don't understand. New Jersey over the last 5 or 6 games weren't producing. They weren't scoring for shit. New York only has a small sample size of 2 or 3 games. There was no sign that they were giving up goals like crazy either. I know New Jersey scored a lot, but I'm saying on paper that was stupid. Unless you guys saw something that you're willing to prove to somebody else, you just you got sucked into being in love with that kind of situation. Why in cash games you didn't stop at Hughes, I don't know. Hughes was dirt cheap. It was perfect access to both Palmieri and Taylor Hall. So if you're not in a tournament, why are you stacking up Hall and Hughes? It's like it nullifies the value. What I would rather do is take Hughes and then jump out of that game and then go pick up a Panarin. Go pick up another one-off somewhere else, like I'm just spitballing here, Boston, like a Marchand. Because if you stack Hughes and Taylor Hall and you've got cheap access to Taylor Hall's big game through Hughes in a cash game, why are you doubling down in a cash game when you don't need the correlation to make the top half? You take Hughes and then you go get somebody that you can't get. See, if you took Hughes and Hall, you can't get a Marchand because Hall's pretty expensive. So now you've ruined your exposure to spread out across the slate and go grab different teams, different skaters from different teams. If you had Taylor Hall was like 50% last night, and the guy hasn't produced crap yet. I mean, might have had a good game last night. That was the wrong move that made a whole bunch of fish feel like they made the right choice. And that's where our edge is in NHL, is when people like Hughes are not owned like they should be, and people like Taylor Hall are way over owned compared to their production. That'd be like going and finding Patrick Kane right now in 45% of lineups. I have no problem with Patrick Kane in tournament lineups. I know the guy's a stud. I know the guy has talent. I know the guy can produce, 40-point nights for 5 nights in a row. He's just not doing it right now. He's not a safe cash play. He's riding his floor all day long. Riding a floor in a cash game is dumb as hell. And that's what Taylor Hall was last night. It worked for you. Congratulations. But it was a fish move, and over the long run, you're going to lose money with it. If you like that kind of advice and need that kind of advice, you need to come inside dfsarmy.com, become a VIP member. You need to get the 20% off using coupon code CHOP, and you need to come celebrate Friday with us. We'll come back later today with box checkers. The NFL research station stuff that I do there. So subscribe to the channel, like the videos, maybe even comment, whatever it is that you want to do. and we'll hopefully cross over and start talking some football here later this afternoon. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.